Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotirtha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila HG Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parudikacharya Ashtotirtha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Thank you for bowing down. That was impressive. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamadiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of September 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're beginning a new chapter, Chapter 4 of Canto 5. Canto 5 is entitled The Creative Impetus, and this chapter is entitled Rsabhadev's Appearance. No, I'm sorry. The Characteristics of Rsabhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're going to read the chapter summary. With Canto 5, we've begun our chapter summaries before each chapter. We're going to try to see if we can get some for the previous cantos as well. In this chapter, Lord Rsabhadev, the son of Maharaj Nabi, begot 100 sons, and during the reign of those sons, the world was very happy in all respects. When Rsabhadev appeared as the son of Maharaj Nabi, he was appreciated by the people as the most exalted and beautiful personality of that age. His poise, influence, strength, enthusiasm, bodily luster, and other transcendental qualities were beyond compare. The word Rishabha refers to the best or the supreme. Due to the super excellent attributes of the son of Maharaj Nabi, the king named his son Rishabha, or the best. His influence was incomparable. Although there was a scarcity of rain, Rsabhadev did not care for Indra, the king of heaven, who was in charge of supplying rain. Through his own potency, Rsabhadev sumptuously covered Ajanaba with ample rain. Ajanaba was the name of the earth. Upon receiving Rsabhadev, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as his son, King Nabi began to raise him very carefully. After that, he entrusted the ruling power to him, and retiring from family life, lived at Badarak Ashram, completely engaged in the worship of Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord. To follow social customs, Lord Rsabhadev for a while became a student in the Gurukul, and after returning, he followed the orders of his guru and accepted a wife named Jayanti, who had been given to him by the king of heaven, Indra. He begot 100 sons in the womb of Jayanti. Of these 100 sons, the eldest was known as Bharat. Since the reign of Maharaj Bharat, this planet has been called Bharatavarsha. If you go to India, you will find that they all call India Bharatavarsha. Rishabhadev's other sons were headed by Kushabharta, Ilabharta, Brahmabharta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasen, Indrasprik, Vidarbha, and Kikata. There were also other sons named Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabuddha, Pipalayana, Abhirhotra, Drumila, Chamasa, and Karabhajana. Instead of ruling the kingdom, these latter nine, became mendicant preachers of Krishna consciousness, following the religious precepts of the Bhagavatam. Their characteristics and activities are described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam during the talks between Vasudeva and Narada at Kurukshetra. To teach the general populace, King Rsabhadev performed many sacrifices and taught his sons how to rule the citizens. So I'm going to read text 1. This is not a verse. Again, we're in prose. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atahatam Utpatyaiva Vivyavajyamana Bhagaval Lakshanam Samyo Pashima Vairagyaishvarya Mahavabhutibir Anudinam Edamana Anubhavam Prakataya Praja Brahmana Devatas Chavani Tala Samavanayatiram Jagridhu. Synonyms. Sri Shuka Uvacha, Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Ataha, thus, after, you're supposed to repeat. Sri Shuka Uvacha, Sri Shukadev Goswami said, Ataha, thus, after the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared, Tam, him, Utpatya, from the beginning of his appearance, Eva, even, Abhivyajamana, distinctly manifested, Bhagavat Lakshanam, possessing the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Samya, equal to everyone, Upashama, completely peaceful, in control of the senses and mind, Vairagya, renunciation, Aishvarya, opulences, Mahavabhutibi, with great attributes, Anudinam, day after day, Edhamana, increasing, Anubhavam, his power, Prakatayaha, the ministers, prajaha, the citizens, brahmanaha, the learned scholars in full knowledge of Brahman, devata, the demigods, cha, and avanitala, the surface of the globe, samavanaya, to rule, aditaram, greatly, jagriduhu, desired. Translation. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, as soon as the Lord was born as the son of Maharaj Nabi, he manifested symptoms of the Supreme Lord, such as marks on the bottoms of his feet, the flag, thunderbolt, etc. This son was equal to everyone and very peaceful. He could control his senses and his mind, and possessing all opulence, he did not hanker for material enjoyment. Endowed with all these attributes, the son of Maharaj Nabi became more powerful day after day. Due to this, the citizens, learned Brahmins, demigods, and ministers wanted Rsabhadeva to be appointed ruler of the earth. Purport. In these days of cheap incarnations, it is very interesting to note the bodily symptoms found in an incarnation. From the very beginning of his birth, it was observed that Rsabhadeva's feet were marked with the transcendental signs, a flag, thunderbolt, lotus flower, etc. In addition to this, as the Lord began to grow, he became very prominent. He was equal to everyone. He did not favor one person and neglect another. An incarnation of God must have the 6 opulences: wealth, strength, knowledge, beauty, fame, and renunciation. It is said that although Rsabhadeva was endowed with all opulences, he was not at all attached to material enjoyment. He was self-controlled and therefore liked by everyone. Due to his super excellent qualities, everyone wanted him to rule the earth. An incarnation of God has to be accepted by experienced people and by the symptoms described in the Shastras. An incarnation is not accepted simply by the adulation of foolish people. Okay. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, one of the aspects of the Krishna consciousness movement is that we accept the idea that God can come down to earth. And in fact, recently, like a week ago or so, we had the celebration of the appearance of Krishna on the earth. It's a very big holiday in India. Everybody celebrates it, even those who are not Hindus. They'll celebrate the appearance of Krishna. It's called Janmashtami. Ashtami means the 8th day after the waning moon, I think, of the waning moon. And every year it falls on a different day on the solar calendar, but around this time, in mid-August to mid-September. So, but Krishna is, he's the source of all incarnations. We say that he's the supreme personality of Godhead, meaning generally that there are other personalities of Godhead, because God can expand. And for instance, we have Lord Ramchandra. He's also very famous, even outside of India. He appeared as a great warrior, and he was exiled to the forest. His wife went with him as queen, and she was kidnapped by a big demon. And the whole Ramayana, a big epic, is dedicated to how he saved his wife and killed the one who had kidnapped her, and so forth. So there's many other incarnations as well. Some are not what we call plenary incarnations. They're powered incarnations, meaning that they possess a specific power of God to perform a certain activity. For instance, there's Narada Muni. Narada Muni is very prominent in this Srimad Bhagavatam. And Narada Muni, he's specifically a power to travel around the universe and give people devotion to God. He teaches them just suitable for their receptivity, so that they can take up the process of Bhakti Yoga, which is what we practice here. So in this Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavat Purana, we're now near the beginning of the 5th canto. There are 12 cantos. It takes, Balaram, you were here when we finished the previous one. Does it take 10 years practically to go through? We're already on the 10th canto. It takes years because we read 1 or 2 verses a day, and there are 18,000 verses, so you can imagine how long it takes. So, but it's quite an epic. And our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he's the founder Acharya of this movement. He came to America in 1965. He was already 69 years old, but he had an instruction from his spiritual master to try to give this science of Krishna consciousness, centering on the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, to the English-speaking world, and especially abroad, not just in India. So he took that upon himself, took a great risk. He had no money, he had no real contacts in America, and yet he was able to get a donated trip on not on an airplane, but on a cargo ship, which is very difficult. In about a month and a half, he was able to come from Calcutta all the way to New York. And by Krishna's arrangement, by Krishna's mercy, he was able to start this movement, and that's why Hare Krishna became so popular. And so, but one of his main projects was writing this Bhagavat Purana. He had already written the first canto, and he had that with him in printed book form. But each night especially, he would get up very, very early, and he would either type or eventually dictate the translations and the commentaries and all of these word-by-word meanings. All of that was part of his presentation. And he finished about 2/3 of it. And I was fortunate to be part of the team that helped finish the book back in the 80s. So this book, we're just now reading the account of the appearance of one of his incarnations, one of Krishna's incarnations, called Rsabhadeva, as I read in the introduction here. It means the best. It means the leader. And our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, makes the point in the purport that we shouldn't be so foolish as to accept anybody and anyone as an incarnation. There have been quite a few who have claimed that, yes, I'm actually Krishna, and you should worship me. You can see how that can be a pretty good business. Because if you're God, then people will bow down to you. They'll give donations, and so we've had people. But these are all false incarnations. We need to first of all consult what we call Shastra or Scripture to see if they're mentioned there, and then see what Prabhupada call the symptoms or the characteristics. What are the qualities and what are the activities? Everyone is defined by that. We also have our qualities and activities. Someone's very tall or short. And these are superficial qualities. Are they intelligent? Are they crazy? Or are they very sane? And then what do they do? What do people do? So I wanted to give an example from some verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. Krishna spoke this about 5,000 years ago, amazingly, on a battlefield, just before a battle took place, and he gave this instruction, which has become very classic. You'll find that in many universities, if they have interreligious studies, or especially Eastern religion studies, they'll definitely read Bhagavad Gita. It's fairly short. Bhagavatam is 18,000 verses, and the Bhagavad Gita is how many? 700 verses, but they're all very essential. So in that Bhagavad Gita, in the second chapter, Krishna describes some of these same qualities that are described for Rsabhadeva, but they're not describing what an incarnation is, but what we can have. We can also have these divine qualities to a certain degree. So in this second chapter, text 55, the question asked by Arjuna, who's Krishna's student on the battlefield, is that what are these characteristics of one whose consciousness is merged in transcendence? Someone who is always absorbed in God consciousness, who's not being moved by the varieties of things that are going on in this world, but is actually fixed. The word stita pragya is there. What are his activities? How does he live, and so forth? So Krishna gives a couple of verses, which I've always thought are really important for us to know, describing the state that as devotees we try to strive for. So he says in the Sanskrit, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partamanogatan apane maminatushta stita pragyasta doshate. O Partha, that's another name for Arjun. When a person gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So this is a significant description here that we can study. First of all, he says he gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification. So sense gratification is what where we normally live. It means that this is our average person's consciousness. If you're hungry, you look for something to eat that tastes good. You may want to have a mate. See something, hear something, taste something, feel something that pleases the senses. And these ideas of sense gratification, they rest within the mind. And if this is what advertising is all about. To put in your mind a desire, implant a desire. You buy Oreo cookies or something like that. And we've probably seen ads for that either on a billboard or on the TV, on the computer screen, whatever. And I used to eat Oreos. They're ancient. I mean, they were around in the 50s and 60s, I think. And they really taste good. I mean, it was the chocolate with the cream in the middle, you know. But as devotees, we wouldn't eat Oreos. We may eat cookies that are specially cooked for Krishna, and we have a very skilled cookie maker. I don't know if he's in the kitchen now. But he makes cookies with pistachios in them and so forth. And they're offered to God. The point is they become sacred when the motive is not just that I'm going to cook something nice and eat it, but I'm going to cook something nice for Krishna, and I'll offer to him, and then I'll take the remnants. And then it becomes an act of love. Just like even in our own lifetime, we may say, oh, you know, my friends are coming over, I'm going to cook what they like, a certain kind of pizza or something. And so you make that and you offer it, and it's an act of exchange of friendship. It says, oh, you made what we liked, thank you very much, you know. So this is a whole different, it's not just sense gratification, it's an act of devotion when we cook for Krishna. So there's all kinds of varieties of sense gratification, and what happens is, because this goes back to the idea of karma and reincarnation, and that's essential to understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. During our lifetime, an ordinary person, we experience so many things that are pleasing and so many things that are displeasing, and those ideas of what's pleasing and displeasing, they stay within the mind. And when we die, which means we leave this body, I have a little couplet that I wrote, a little poem that is kind of embodies some of the philosophy. Everybody dies, nobody dies. Wake up and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. The whole philosophy is there. So the idea is that these bodies, as we know, are very frail and fragile. Sometimes they get sick. There's all kinds of troubles that come as you get older. Believe me, it gets more fraught, and there's more pains and more threats, and then there's that big death that's coming at you. You know, everyone's going to die. You know, every body dies, but nobody dies. The soul never dies. This is the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita, which in one sense is great news. This is real gospel. Isn't that what gospel means? Great news. But it has an implication to it, because if we don't die, what happens to us? We take another body. So now the question comes not just how much can I enjoy in this one body, but what about my future body? How can I act now to get the best future body? And the actual best future body is not a material body; it's a spiritual body, where there's no death, no disease, no old age, no more misery, just bliss. This is what we're hankering for. We can see that life is a series of efforts to try to maximize the happiness and minimize the distress, isn't it? Whatever clothes we buy, what temperature it is, what we're doing today, the plans. All right, I got to go to school, I got to go to work, because then I can have, you know, some future, I can have a place to live. You boil it all down, and we're trying to increase our happiness and our peace and minimize our distress. But the fact is, as long as we have one of these material bodies, and all of us sitting here have one, we're going to be fraught or threatened, and ultimately have to suffer old age, disease, and death, and rebirth. And when those aren't happening directly, we have what we call these threefold miseries. Daniel, what's one of the threefold miseries? Do you remember? I mean, you probably experienced all of them. The ones caused by other living beings, oftentimes by other human beings, right? So much misery is caused by one human being on another. All these wars and things that happen. In a marriage, it can become, anyway. You understand. So that's one kind we've all experienced. Another kind, which is very prominent in the news, caused by natural events. We call these Adi Daivik, meaning that there's devas behind them. We've got the huge fires out here, and on the other side of the country we have the floods, and then in the south we've got the hurricanes, and right here, we don't have one right now, but we always have the threat of earthquakes. I was here in '94 when there was an earthquake. I felt like it was, the whole building was shaking. We didn't have these chandeliers, we had other ones, but they were swinging. I was upstairs and I ran outside. Should have run toward the deities, but I was in Maya. I don't know if it was I think it was that one. Yeah. And the sidewalk, I was like on a skateboard or on a surfboard. But it only lasted a few seconds. It really, wasn't, because it wasn't centered here. It was centered up north. So that you can imagine how terrifying that is. We've heard about it and read about it. So these are natural disturbances, and then everything may be nice. Nobody is bothering you. Weather is perfect. You're sitting quietly, but you're in pain. Some depression. Somebody wrote you a letter or whatever, and your own body and your mind can be giving you trouble. These are the three qualities. One of those is either we've all had experience. One of those we're either suffering or we're threatened by them, and the threat of them is also a big anxiety, and that's why we get insurance. That's the whole insurance industry, to try to mitigate the threats of these things. So can you imagine getting rid of all these miseries? No birth, no death, no old age, no disease, and no threefold miseries? That's what we in the Hare Krishna movement are striving for. But that's the negative side. On the positive side is the happiness, is the bliss, and of which sense gratification is a pale reflection. And in fact, it's a trap. Because the more you try to enjoy your senses, the more you will ensure suffering in the future. We all have experience either directly, hopefully indirectly, of addiction. Nobody takes a drug, and say, yeah, I really want to get addicted, so that'll, ruin my life. No, everyone is looking for happiness, or maybe peace, right? Try to relax or do something like that. But the more, if you get into that too much, then that becomes your controller and a source of misery. It could be alcohol. So many alcoholics. A very powerful addiction that you want to drink in order to forget something or to loosen up or enjoy, but you end up becoming addicted, and it wrecks your body and the brain. Is horrible. So this is what material life is all about. The attempt to enjoy and then becoming entrapped in a series of miseries that are due to that enjoyment. But we're enjoying beings. So how can we enjoy? Here it says, Atmaneva Atmana Tushta. Here's a person who he's given up all varieties of sense gratification, which arise from the mind, and finds satisfaction in the self alone. Now that satisfaction is the beginning of what we call ananda. We are by nature full of ananda, because we're part and parcel of Krishna, God, who's full of ananda. If God can't always be happy and blissful, then how can he be God? He's the supreme controller. So Krishna is by nature Ananda. He's known Anandamaya Bhyasat. This is one of the phrases that we know from the Shastra. Now, we're part and parcel of God. We also have that nature, but it's covered now. We can't experience it. So Krishna consciousness is a process of purification by which we gradually experience that natural happiness that we can experience. And it doesn't depend on age. I'm not a fully self-realized soul, but still, I even in my old age here, 73 years old, I'm still can experience at least as much as I experienced when I first joined at age 25. Whereas if I was depending on my body, oh my God, so many things aren't working like they're supposed to work, I'd be totally depressed. But no, because you're hooking up to the source of bliss, reservoir of bliss, which is in your heart, and we all have it. It doesn't age. So that's the first quality. Then here's another one. This is another amazing quality. Dukeshvano vignamana, sukeshu begataspaha. Vita raga bhaya krodha stita dhirmanaruchate. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries which I mentioned, or elated when there is happiness, material happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind. Just imagine what it's like to be free of fear. We've had this pandemic going, right, for almost 2 years now. I mean, it's a year and 3/4, I would say, about. And so much fear, with people, because I could get sick, and I know, to die alone in a hospital bed trying to breathe. Oh my God, it's like the worst thing you can imagine. I mean, let's face it, that's terrifying. But as devotees, yes, we take precautions, wear masks, and I got vaccinated twice. We try to take precautions, but in the meanwhile, we don't live our lives in a state of fear and anxiety. Because we're transcendental. We're trying to transcend the bodily concept of life. And we know, deep inside, that even if the body dies, we're not going to die. No, we're not going to die. And we have an auspicious future. This is another wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness. Everything you gain and do on the material side is eventually taken away from you. Suppose you become, a millionaire or 10 millions or even a billionaire, and you have all these properties and you got all this influence and connections. Hello, it's all connected to this body. All of your accounts are in your name, but that's the name of the body, but you're not the body. So when you leave the body, you leave all the money behind, the influence behind, everything behind. So now what? Now you have to suffer the reaction for all the things you had to do to become a billionaire. You see the problem with that. So if you're free from fear and attachment, because you have minimal things in this world, materially, but you're maximizing your understanding and your relationship with God, with Krishna, and that's giving you so much satisfaction that you don't feel, you feel, hey, this is great. What does it say? Freedom means to have nothing less to lose. That's right from the Bhagavad Gita. If you don't feel that you need so much, some of our greatest acharyas, they showed how just living with a little, minimal clothes even, not even having a place that they lived under a tree in Vrindavan, which is our most holy place. But they were always absorbed in the highest levels of God consciousness, Krishna consciousness, and they were totally in bliss. They were the richest in all the world, even though materially they had the least. So material wealth is a great trap, more than you need. You need enough to live, obviously. But to be thinking about it and absorbed in that is a source of great anxiety. So Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, being fear from attachment, fear from fear, and fear from anger. Why do we get angry? Because our desires are being frustrated. Somebody or something has impeded our ability to enjoy or something, and we get angry, and we may do something that we later regret for the rest of our life. Hurt someone or even kill someone. I mean, hopefully we only read about it in the newspapers and didn't experience it. But it's disastrous. All because you have this material desire that's located in the body. But a devotee who is connected with Krishna in the heart, he feels, hey, like the other day somebody took my shoes. Actually, twice it happened in the last week. They didn't take them. They took them away from where they were so I couldn't find them. But I said, who took my shoes? I'm going to go get them, I said, okay, this happened to me in India. I know what goes. So I went in and looked for my shoes, and I found them. And one devotee had borrowed them and taken from here to the kitchen. Okay, but you see, I could have gone completely ballistic just from losing the shoes, and we can lose other things, But if you say, oh, nothing is mine, everything belongs to God. I'm just borrowing it anyway, so now I don't have it anymore. So Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The Hare Krishna mantra, if you get into chanting, we can show you how to chant, is a source of great peace and happiness and joy and purification. Everything is there in that process of chanting. So these qualities develop in devotees. I'm going to read one more, maybe two more. Yak sarvatana bisnehas tatar papa shabashamam nabananda ninadveshti tasya pragyabhatishita. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So the main idea is that if someone is absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then you can tolerate so many of the dualities of this world. Heat and cold, I remember when I joined in Brooklyn. We had a temple in Brooklyn. We still have one, but it was a different temple. And it was the end of March in New York, which is pretty cold. It hadn't, spring hadn't really come yet. And so we had two buildings. One was maybe a couple of blocks from the other one, and my duties had to do with the second building. So I spend my morning in the temple, and I'd go to the second building to work on books, as I've been doing all these years. This was 1973 we're talking about. And it was freezing cold, But I just memorized a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and I chanted that verse. It's not like I immediately felt warm, but I felt like I could tolerate. He said, Matra sparshastu konteya, shito shnasu guduga. Shita means cold. Ushna means heat. He says, shito shnasu guduga, agamapainu tam tatikshasva bharata. The word tatiksha means tolerate. He says, the contact of the senses with their objects produces heat and cold, pleasure and pain, but these sensations come and go. Simply learn to tolerate them, Arjun. And this is a very good instruction. And the fact of the matter is, if you chant Hare Krishna, you can learn how to tolerate easily, because you're always connected with that name. And Prabhupada tells a story of all people who give the example of tolerance, Stalin. Yeah, that's Stalin. And he had to have an operation on his stomach, and they said, well, can we give you the anesthesia? He said, no, don't bother. I'll tough it out. And he wasn't like screaming. He was mentally strong enough to be able to tolerate that. The real reason, I know, is because he was afraid if he got anesthetized that he would be assassinated. He didn't want to go under. He didn't trust the doctor that much. But anyway, the example is that if your mind is absorbed in Krishna, then you can tolerate so much. So that's what this one's about. And finally, he gives the example of the turtle. We've all seen how a turtle can pull in his feet and his head. If there's danger, he's got that hard shell. Yada sanganade chayam, one who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise withdraws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So the idea is that in Krishna consciousness, you get the spiritual strength to say, no, I'm not going to enjoy this right now. This is going to be harmful for me. And so you have another place to put the mind where you can be attracted, and that's Krishna. And it gives you the power to be fixed. Otherwise, the senses can take over if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever. Even if you don't seem to be an addict, but you have these strong urges that is just impossible to stop. So Krishna consciousness helps you to do that. Now, Lord Rsabhadeva, he had these qualities and much more, because he is, after all, an incarnation. So he was endowed with all these qualities and also powers. And as he began to grow up, they said, "Oh, this is the person we want to lead this kingdom." And so eventually he became the king. And this chapter will describe some of his activities. We just began it. But then in a few chapters, actually is the next chapter, it begins with his retirement, his imminent retirement. And he's giving his instructions. And these instructions are like super important. You can see that so much of the Bhagavatam is that things happen and they lead up to very important conversations. And those conversations contain so much instruction. So his first instruction is like important for all human beings. So since we won't be reading it for a while, I'll give you a few coming attractions. So this is Nayam Deho Dehabardang Loke Kashtang Kamanadate Vidbujange Topo Divyam Putrakayena Sattvam Shuddye Yasmad Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam. So much of the philosophy is right in this one verse. So he's giving very strong words to his 100 sons. It describes he had 100 sons, one of whom is Bharad, who will be the next ruler, and 9 of whom become great learned sages who travel. They're mendicants, and we'll meet them again in the 11th canto, the 9 Yogendras. So he says in this verse, I put it into a little poem, the essence of it. It says, "Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss." So the key first concept here is that the contrast between material happiness, which he condemns as polluted, is very flickering, as we have experience. You aspire for it. If your karma is there, you'll get it, but then it's gone. And then you try to do it again. You maybe do it, and then at a certain point you can, and so you're left with the desire for it. So this is flickering happiness. Brahma Sukha is a steady, unending happiness, which can be ever increasing happiness. So here's it says, don't waste your life, this precious human life. Remember at the beginning, we talked about how nobody dies. Everybody lives on as spirit. And we inhabit different bodies. So we all have seen these lower bodies. Even the plants out there, they also have a soul. They're very low birth. Their consciousness is very, very rudimentary. And we've seen insects, sometimes they wander in here, they're all over the place. And animals, is over 8 million different kinds of species according to the Vedas. So the human life is the pinnacle of that. We evolve, not that the bodies evolve, the bodies are already there, but our consciousness evolves up to the human form. And everyone sitting here is a human being, right? And therefore we have the brain, the intelligence, to control the lower self. The animals, they work on what we call instinct, right? It says that, the dog doesn't have to figure out how to bark and, how to be doggish. It comes with the territory. As he grows up, it naturally develops. He does what he does. And that's true for all these different species. But we have this intelligence by which we can reflect, and we can decide, I'm going to do this and not that. This will produce a better result. And mostly that's within the material realm. Okay, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to go to college. I know to get a good job. And then when I'm in college, I can't just party all the time. I got to study for this. I want to party, but I'm going to do. So you decide, you control this urges in order to get a better future. Well, it's still within the realm. Even if you get a better job, it's still within the material realm. But with bhakti, you can decide. He's saying here, you should perform transcendental or spiritual austerity. And we all perform austerities. I read about one time how people get up sometimes to get up and get on the road at 4 o'clock so they commute to their job. That's not unusual, right, in Southern California. So we get up at 4 o'clock in order we come to the temple and worship God. So we're both getting up at the same time. They're performing austerities, but they're material austerities, right? So I can get to the job. And ultimately that doesn't save him from birth and death. But coming to Mangalartik and doing the other things that we do, these are called divya tapa, or divine austerities. So he's saying that you should find out from a teacher, a guru, how to perform these divine austerities so that you purify your existence and come to the state of being able to enjoy Brahma Sukha, spiritual happiness, which is the key, Anantam, endless. We ourselves as spirit are endless. And we have our birthright is to be able to immerse ourselves in this endless happiness, which is characterized by unlimited lila with Krishna, pure spirit. Pastimes. Just like now we have activities we try to enjoy. Sometimes we can't enjoy, we have to go to work, But in Krishna's abode, there's no work. It's all play. Krishna has a job. He takes out the cows for his father. But what does he do out there? As soon as they get out to the forest, the cows, they're doing okay. They're grazing on the grass. And Krishna's playing with his friends. It's all play. It's lila. Isn't that what we want to do? Play all the time? Of course. But we know we can't. We have to work in order to make money. That's not pleasant, right? So this is the world of dualities. But in Krishna pastimes, which we are part of, we've just forgotten, there's always play. And it's always blissful, full of ananda in every respect. So he's saying the basic principle is that we accept the idea that I have to restrain the senses and use them in a certain way so that I can purify my existence and come to the point of being eligible to enjoy this unending happiness. This is the first instruction of Lord Rsabhadeva. And he goes on with other important instructions, which I won't be able to get into right now. But I think that's enough for now. If we have any questions or discussion, we can.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, hold on a minute, Vijay. We'll put you in the queue. Anyone else locally? Did it make any sense? Some of it? You're not all completely new to Hare Krishna, are you? The lounge, maybe you've come to? Or you just read a book? Okay, great. She's the guru. She's the one who dragged you here, right? I can tell. Anyway, thank you all for coming. Okay, you're on, Daniel.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. You're talking about the threefold miseries, and I think you only talked about two. One is caused by others, beings, right? That's one.
Yes, Adi Bhautik.
And then one is natural events.
Adi Daivik.
And then
Adhyatmic.
Adhyatmic.
The ones that your own mind giving you trouble. You know. Now the thing is, there's some overlap. Like we got this pandemic. I think everyone knows about the pandemic, right? So is it Adi Bhautik or is it Adhyatmic? Once you got it, it's your own lungs that are giving you trouble, right? In a sense, you know. So they merge into each other. You're in an earthquake, right? And you fall down into a crevice in the earth or something. That's kind of, and what happens? You break your leg. Now your leg is giving you trouble. That's Adi Bhautik. So the Adi Daivik is called. But anyway, they're miserable and they're always threatening. Yes, please, because we have people on the internet.
What is the best way to keep your intentions pure throughout life?
To keep your intentions? Did they say intentions?
Yes, because the reason why I asked that question is you said something earlier about, you know, like the intention, like driving to work, like you're doing this austerity, and the intention
yes,
is
and it's for a certain goal, reason.
Yes,
yeah.
And the goal is to get to work versus the austerity of, you know,
getting up early in the morning and coming to the temple.
Yes, and you know, with the intention of transcendence or giving to Krishna.
It's a really good question. That's a great question.
But like at some point, doesn't like doing these austerities for the purpose of transcendence in itself become an impure?
Does it become impure?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because like if the goal is just to do it just for transcendence, isn't that impure?
Well, the idea is this: is that it's a whole. Our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, he would say it's a science, and it's tried and true. In other words, there's a long line of people who've done this and succeeded. But the idea is that you know, to keep your intentions pure, that's really the essence of Bhakti Yoga. We have so many books and been written by a spiritual master, and he's mainly translated books that have been written by previous spiritual masters in Sanskrit. You know, we need the translation. So we have to. I'm not sure if this is part of your question, but if it is, it is. Is that we have to do things to keep body and soul together. Okay, I have a job. I can't just quit my job. You know, I need to live. But we have a certain amount of free time. What we do with our free time is if we're learning about Krishna consciousness, and especially this chanting of the mantra, the chanting of the Hare Krishna, because it goes very deep. And our philosophy our understanding is that Krishna is in the heart of all of us. There's a super soul there. We're there as this individual soul. This is in the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter. And Krishna is also there in expansion. He's giving us intelligence to do what we want to do. He's overseeing and saying, okay, you know, he knows all the karma. He says, yeah, okay, you're eligible to get this. Now you got to suffer, and this is you're going to go. So we're being guided, you know. But what Krishna wants us to do, this is what he does to facilitate our life in the material world. But what he wants us to do is to come back to him, because we're all, simply put, children of God. He's the Father. And he wants to welcome us back into his Leela. So as soon as we begin chanting and doing what you're doing, which is like sitting and hearing this philosophy, which you won't find anywhere else, I like to point out that, you know, everything depends on what, you know, our association, you know, what you do. So as you may know, about 100 feet down the block here, there's a bar and grill, you know, and stuff. So some people go in, many more people go in there, unfortunately, than come in here. But you chose to come in here. So that means that there's some interest there, you know, and like you asked a question. So the simple answer is that what we have called sadhana, the practice, like in anything. I learned an instrument when I was a kid. First the recorder, then a clarinet, and then flute. So I went to a teacher each time. There was a teacher, no, do it this way, breathe this way, keep your fingers this way. So when you get a teacher, which also can be through books, here's how to purify your intentions. How to, and that is begin with chanting, and we have some beads. We can make sure, if you're interested in that, or just kirtan. There's two types. Solitary chanting, where it's mostly like a meditation, which we do for a couple hours every morning, from 5:15 to 7:15. And also collective singing and dancing chanting, which you're probably more familiar with. And that helps to go deep and changes our, the very root of our consciousness, if you will. And what it especially does is that Krishna is acting from within, and he's attracting you to him. With the word Krishna, it's such a powerful word. It's made of two syllables. I memorized this verse recently, which I won't try to chant the Sanskrit right now. But Krish and Na. Krish, it means to attract. And embodied in that sound is all of the attractive features of Krishna. The form, the qualities, the flute playing, the words, everything. And Na, the Na, is the happiness or pleasure or bliss that's accrued to it. So when you chant that name Krishna, this is a science unknown in the West of how simple sounds can transform your consciousness. They can do other things too. There's tantric, science where you chant mantras to destroy your enemies and all kinds of things. So the sound is very, very powerful. And this mantra, we didn't make it up. It was popularized tremendously by an incarnation who appeared 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya. He's on the other altar there. He's on our right. And he's the one who started this widespread chanting and dancing. Because here we are in Kali Yuga. We can't go off to the Himalayas and okay, I'm just going to be completely alone. I'm not going to be with anybody else and just breathe, keep my back straight and meditate. How long can we do that? Maybe 10 minutes. It takes years to try to perfect that. We don't need to do it. He said, you just come together and chant Hare Krishna. It doesn't matter what you've done. You just do that. And all auspiciousness will come to your life. So this is the answer. You practice Bhakti Yoga, beginning with the chanting of the holy name. We can show you how to do it individually if you want. And here's the temple. You all must be nearby, live within the San Diego area. No? You're visiting from afar?
I converted a van into a tiny home, and I travel. So
oh, you travel? Okay.
My house is pretty close.
Okay. Anyway, whenever you go into a different place, see if you can find the Hare Krishna temple there. But we're going to have we have classes in the evening, 7:15, 8:15, and you're all welcome to come and get a book. You should all have at least one book, maybe Bhagavad Gita or even a small book, and you can read, make notes, ask questions, and we'll help you to learn more. Mukunda hasn't. Maybe in this regard. Hare Krishna, hope that helped.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think part of her point was that you mentioned how someone can get up at 4 a.m., but if it's to go to work to make money to enjoy, then the austerity is the intentions material. Therefore, the austerity is material. Therefore, it won't give the
Right.
real benefit. And so she was saying, even if one's going to the temple, though, if one's getting up at 4, going to the temple, how can one guarantee that one's intentions are pure? Because even if they're going to the temple, they could be seeking, as she said, like transcendence, or we could say liberation. If they're seeking liberation, that's not maybe the purest motive. So then, even if you're going to the temple, how do you check and see if your own intentions for going to the temple or even practicing Krishna consciousness spirituality is even pure itself? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, and we know from Western religion, for instance, people go to church generally. It used to be more, but go every Sunday. They go, and they basically had material motives, and that's okay because they're approaching God. They had trouble in their life. Please, cure this disease, or help my kid get through school, or whatever it is, or I need to pay the rent, please, That's okay. But that's not the highest kind of intention. At least it brings you into the church. People don't come to the Hare Krishna temple, if they need money. because they know that we're living here, simply here, and but they come mostly out of curiosity or interest in finding out what's going on, because it's something alien, something interesting. But the idea is to keep the intentions pure is you need to find out what pure intentions are. What's the proper attitude we're coming to the temple, and this is all present in the books. If you read one of the Prabhupada's books, you'll soon encounter the consciousness of someone who's serious about advancing in this path. And you say, okay, I'll do this and won't do that. I'll do this and won't do that. And this way you keep on the right side. It's similar to someone who's serious about becoming, like, a Olympic gymnast. Is that, whoa, talk about austerities, but I got that gold medal, and I'm going to do it. I may be 15 years old, but I think I can do it. And here's my ideal. That lady, black lady, who's so incredible. Then you have to be one-pointed. In other words, because this is a path. It's a sadhana, which is changing your whole way of thought and your whole way of being. But the goal is the greatest goal you can possibly have: liberation from birth and death, and returning back home, back to Godhead, to be with our dear Lord, who we left so many millions of years ago. So once you get that goal in mind and you realize there's a path to it, then you can keep your intentions pure. I think that's the answer. Okay, Vijay, you're on. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
He's in Portugal. He attends all the classes, but go ahead.
My humble obeisance, Dravida Prabhu. Thank you for your wonderful class. Prabhu, the verse you chose for today, 541, the translation, the quote from the translation is, quote, he could control his senses and his mind, and possessing all opulence, he did not hanker for material enjoyment, end quote. So, Prabhu, you know better than me that there is no difference between Lord Krishna, the supreme opulent one, and the Mahamantra. So, my question is, in what measure chanting Hare Krishna diminishes the hankering for material enjoyment?
I think we all experience that. Those are chanted. Well, it's in one sense it's easy to understand, because as I explained, the name Krishna and the name Rama, what is that verse? Ramante yogino anante satyananda charatmani iti brahmapade iti ramapade nasapadam brahmavidiyate. It says the yogis, and we're trying to be yogis, bhakti yogis, they enjoy unending happiness, and therefore the absolute truth, Supreme Brahman, is also known as Rama. The name Rama itself embodies this pleasure. Rama, Rameti, Rameti. Shiva is speaking to Parvati, how he's chanting Rama. But the name Krishna is also full of happiness. So the simple idea is this, is that Krishna is all attractive, but he's so subtle, we've forgotten him for ages and ages. We've completely cut ourselves off out of foolishness. So now we want to turn back. But we're so habituated or conditioned to this other form of living and thinking and being that we need training. And the Hare Krishna mantra, when we chant it, try to chant with regularly and with devotion and with certainly concentration, then this is inconceivable. How this sound can be, as you said, non-different from Krishna himself. He says all the attractiveness and the bliss that Krishna has. But if we chant it, just the sound itself attracts us away from the material to the spiritual. We're attracted to Krishna. And then, the form of Krishna, the service to Krishna, everything about Krishna, which we read in the books, it all becomes more attractive. Because we're purifying our soul, purifying our consciousness of the impurities of these material desires that have been building up for many, many births. So it's a powerful cleanser. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. This is a verse written by, I'll end with this also, written by Lord Chaitanya. I mentioned Lord Chaitanya, who was an incarnation of Krishna, who started this whole movement. So he wrote 8 verses about the holy name. And the first one is, it's called Shikshastika, instructions. The first one, he gives 7 metaphors describing the benefits of chanting. So I'll give you the Sanskrit, because it's all attractive anyway. Cheto darpana marjanam, bhava mahada vagni nirvapanam, shreya kaidava chandrikavatadanam vidyavadhu jivanam, Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamita svadanam sarvatmasnapadam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Now tell me, did you ever hear a language like that? I can... Anyway, we're out of time. But anyway, so the translation, I made a little poem out of it. All glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy name, all glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's name is sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. So the whole philosophy is actually there. And I wish I could take another hour to go through each one of these metaphors, but that's the main sadhana, and that's what we'll do. Vijay?
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. Again, wonderful answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Hare Bo.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Now, can you stay for breakfast? That's the question. Okay.